Good morning, everyone. We're about to get started, so please take your seats. If you're new to the Retail Pro community, welcome. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Alexandra Frith. I am Marketing and Design Manager for Retail Pro International, and it is my honor to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. This person is responsible for leadership and vision of this company, but his impact hardly ends there. Over the last few years, he has led us to grow a product portfolio, to expand our global footprint, and to develop many deeply meaningful relationships with other industry leaders. Always leading from the heart, he inspires and he fosters success not just in our company, but your companies, our retailers, and all of the companies operating in the Retail Pro community. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Retail Pro International, Mr. Kerry Lemos.
Too kind, Alexandra. Thank you very much. Welcome to all of you. I appreciate you being here. If you're a business partner, I know you've spent money, time, and opportunity costs where you're not selling or delivering services to be here. If you're a development partner or a sponsor, I greatly appreciate your money, but I appreciate your support even more. This year's event is special for me because you may or may not know, I was born in San Francisco. I lived the bulk of my life here. It is the place I know best on this earth. And when we decided that we were going to go ahead and use San Francisco as the location of choice for this year's event, I really tried to participate granularly in the location that we chose for off-site, the food that we chose, and tried to really give it that sort of from-the-heart locals flavor. I think that this location is really appropriate for us. This is the retail epicenter of the San Francisco Bay Area right here in Union Square. Certainly all the luxury and fine goods retailers are within a 1,000-mile radius of this hotel. One thing I will say is that I learned something. 20 months ago when we chose this hotel, the management staff told us about the exciting renovation of the meeting space, the renovation of the sleeping rooms, the renovation of the public areas, and assured us that by the time our group got here, the renovation would be long finished. And I've learned that hotel renovations are apparently like software development. You can never really give anybody a complete assurance of when you're going to deliver. So I think the place is beautiful. They did a really great job on the renovation, and we'll just bear with our little micro lobby for a couple of days, and makes it a very European-style hotel in that way. We're very excited at Retail Pro about the state of the state, right? Our growth, our expansion, our profitability, the new products we're bringing to bear, the new directions, the new thought leadership. But I'm going to sort of steer away from giving you a pull-the-string, state-of-the-state address. And I'm going to try and, we all work in this industry. I don't know whether you have the time to read the sort of outpouring of analyst reports and opinions and you're all busy people. I take the time to do it. I think it's important. And so I've tried to do is put together sort of a synthesis of the reading that I've done in the last 6 months and some of the studies I've read and some of the statistics and sort of synthesize for you what seems to be the general truths and trends coming out of this. Not so much some of the opinions that are too standard deviations from the mean, but the core truths that seem to be agreed upon on both sides of the fence, on the side of the fence of the analyst and on the side of the fence of retailers. And if I can, periodically tie it back to what we're doing as a company, how we're responding, where we are going, how we're trying to position ourselves in the ecosystem. So my goal is to talk a little bit about retail, this place we all derive our income from. And the state of retail has become sort of dominated by the word now on all sides. Consumers want information now. They want fulfillment now. They want change in retail now. Retailers feel like now is the time that they've got to adapt and change. And this phrase, the only constant is change, or change is the only constant, it's one I've used for years, probably overused in my personal and business life. And if 10 years ago, maybe 15, let's say, if I was to come up here and try and say there's revolutionary change going on in retailing, it would be a laughable statement. Because on a macro level, retailing was pretty constant from the 1880s to the 1980s. Wasn't a lot of revolutionary or even evolutionary change to retailing. And the change that happened in the 80s was only one of computer systems becoming affordable and replacing paper systems. So it was inventory control, faster tenders, and faster credit card processing. But that's the only piece that really touched the customer experience. It was an operational effectiveness play, basically. And for years after the 80s, it was a polish the stone thing. More advanced point-of-sale systems, better data, better analytics, but it wasn't revolutionary. I think what we see going on right now is revolution in retail. And I think both sides agree. The suppliers, the analysts, and the retailers agree that the change is driven by technology and is manifesting itself in many different ways in retail. One way it manifests itself is in the voice of the customer. The voice of the customer today is louder than it's ever been, more targeted and specific than it's ever been, more omnipresent, and yet not necessarily easy to hear. If you're not listening in the right way, if you're listening in the traditional ways as a retailer, this is not paper surveys and satisfaction surveys filled out at point of purchase. This is a different social media kind of feedback, and it's backed up by the spending of the consumer. If you're not tracking it, you're not hearing it. If you're not participating, you're not hearing it. The customer experience is another manifestation of change. This is a weird one in that technology is actually improving the face-to-face intimacy of retailing. Going back to the merchant and the customer. And perhaps, mobile plays a role in this, getting rid of the counter, getting more one-to-one, but it's beyond that. It's in targeted marketing and promotions. It's in the tools that are being used, a more intimate one-to-one customer experience. And lastly, it's manifesting itself in the need for consumer connectedness. And this is not something that retailers can just buy, like SEO or outsourced direct mail services. This is something that retailers have to and should become connected themselves and participate at an organic level. Involve themselves in social media. Be active and understanding of what it takes to be connected. It's no simple thing to revolutionize your approach to how you acquire, hold, entice consumers when you've been doing something for 20 plus years in a very staid and sort of proven in its era fashion. The omni-channel m-commerce world that retailers live in today is confusing to them. Some statistics about what's going on that they have to deal with. 28% of consumers say that they use some form of social media to research all purchases. 30% of them use some form of social media in transacting purchases. So what this argues on some level is the war that was predicted about online is the enemy of brick and mortar? Is it going to be we store as showroom, where we touch and feel the product, and then we run back home to try and find the best price? Or is it going to be the opposite? We use the social media, we use the online sites to compare, to find information, to line the products up, but we want immediate fulfillment, so we run to the store and we buy it there. It turns out that the answer to this is yes and yes, and one is not the enemy of the other. It's a continuum driven by technology, demonstrated by these two numbers. These are from different surveys, so today, despite the grand growth in e-commerce, it still only accounts for 7% of all retail purchases. Now, this is a slightly skewed number because it includes grocery. But if you look at a number that doesn't include grocery, 41% of all non-grocery purchases are online influenced. So just the math right there tells you that online is not the enemy of brick and mortar. It is a continuum. The consumer is not making a dialectic choice. They're using every tool available to them in every way and fashion. It is more of a continuum than it is an either or. And they see this, in 4 years, that number growing to 50%. Half of all purchases in retail, online influenced. So retailers are required to make some kind of coordinated effort to stay involved in this omni-channel m-commerce world and to be serious about it. This is why, the sort of buzzwords of what we're trying to do in future products are open and agnostic. I'm not going to sit here and say we predicted this outcome, but what we are making sure we do in Prism, in our mobile solution, is stay open and agnostic. No matter which path the consumer travels and the retailer has to follow, we need to be able to be there, to be capable of supporting that. That is how we're approaching this. We're not trying to be the thought leader in terms of which way the market goes, but we are certainly trying to be the close follower in trends and keeping our options open. That's probably the most important. In this sort of omni-channel, multi-channel world, the consumer has a lot of tools. One of the tools that's becoming dominant is the smartphone. So smartphones today influence about 5% of all retail purchases. It's about $160 billion. But I think we know that that's growing, rapidly growing. There's some statistics about use of smartphones. So 61% of these people say they use the product when they're shopping in store. That right there tells you it is not an either or. Online is the enemy of brick and mortar world. And if they're using their device in your store, they're 14% more likely to make a purchase. And if they're using your discrete app for your retail outlet, they're 21% more likely to make a purchase. So technology is not the enemy of the brick and mortar store, it is the friend. And of course, we see these smartphones not just being involved in this part of the continuum, but also emerging as payment devices. So they're playing a role in the transactive continuum of retail. It's interesting, one survey yielded that the most common behavior seems to be I use my laptop or my desktop, my browser-based tools, to search, identify, and inform on a purchase. But when I want to shop for price and availability, I use my smartphone. There is the continuum. It's not even one form of technology working against another. It is a continuum of the consumer using each and every tool that they have at their disposal. The smartphone is starting to become a deal finding tool after you've done the research. Talk a little bit about the customer experience. So the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, dominant in many ways in retailing. This is probably the oldest statistic of the 80-20 rule in retail, which is you get 80% of your business from the 20% of your customers that are loyal, repeat, dedicated customers to your business. There's also an 80-20 rule that says of all the money you're ever going to spend on a customer in their customer life, you're going to spend 80% of it acquiring them. And that's a kind of a skewed statistic because it takes into account all the money you spend that actually doesn't acquire anybody, but it holds true. So retention, acquisition and retention are the focuses for survival. The math works out that if you can improve your retention 5%, you can potentially improve your profitability 75%. So acquisition and retention, and perhaps not in that order, perhaps retention and acquisition are the buzzwords, the mandates for retailers to survive. And it's not as simple as just saying those things. It involves one-to-one targeted loyalty programs, service and care programs, the willingness to participate in the store as a showroom mentality, and all of that converged together. There's sort of a hidden lining in here, this for us who are in the industry as suppliers. Retailers, specifically in North America, they realize that they're woefully unprepared technologically. And that IHL survey said that 40% of all retailers plan to invest in upgrading their technology store infrastructure. And of that 40%, 78% of them said point of sale was a core tool in being modern, effective, and customer connected. So these are real trends, real facts, real investments that are going to happen. And keep in mind that this is in a low single-digit GDP growth market, not the double-digit growth markets outside of North America. So if this is the view in North America, you can imagine that it's enhanced in the markets where cash is more readily available, where growth is happening, where there's a burgeoning middle class that's actively becoming consumers. Now, some of this investment is being driven by the sort of sexiness of mobile and the desire for everybody to move to mobile. And it's sort of, to some degree, has fostered this non-war war that is in the media right now about what is going to win. Is it going to be mobile or is it going to be hardened point of sale? Is hardened point of sale going away? There's no answer to that question except the reality of it, which is, my personal opinion, the retail pro opinion, is that this is a peaceful coexistence thing, not an either-or thing. I mean, mobile has got a place in revitalizing the one-to-one aspect of the in-store relationship. But that one-to-one thing is not simply when you get them through the doors of your store. It needs to exist before, in drawing them in targeted promotions, in loyalty programs that are very granular and specific. The hardware itself just tends to be a tool, and we do not see there being a clear winner in tablet devices versus hardened point of sale. I think the coexistence is the likely outcome, which is why we've built the Prism product to run in either. It's device agnostic to the greatest degree. One of the things that the same survey yielded is that And we had the exact same results ourselves. We did a survey of many of the clients asking, what do you want in mobile? You know, if you did a quadrant on it, it was a scatter diagram. And this survey actually came back with the same results, slightly different formulation, which basically said they want 90% of what was in a hardened point of sale in a mobile device. That's the same result we got, basically, which is that some people want this, some people want that, but if you're building a solution, you know, that overlay, in a Venn diagram overlays the bulk of the needs, you need 90% in the mobile device, what you had in the hardened point of sale. And that is why we built Prism the way we built it. This sort of iPad versus hardened point of sale thing is becoming sort of a perceived war or perhaps a perceived shortcoming of Retail Pro. Every time, there was an article 2 months ago, I think, and partners send it to me with sort of like a link and sort of an implied the sky is falling kind of mentality. One of them was, and you probably read this, the CTO of Urban Outfitters said he'd never put another hardened point of sale in any of his retail outlets. And that was, he made that open statement. And, you know, when you really analyze that, that was probably more a pandering marketing play to his target market than it was a statement about infrastructure and technology, right? Who shops at Urban Outfitters? It's the youth hipster market. And they're going to be very, very enthralled by, you know, technologically where Urban Outfitters is. But could you see Steinmart or the dollar store making such an announcement? I don't think so. It is a peaceful coexistence of these devices. It's not one is going to take over the world and and traditional hardened point of sale is going to evaporate. Either way, the message I want to get through is that we're not betting on either horse. We're prepared to go either path and really see this capability of, you know, peaceful coexistence being the outcome there. You know, whichever way it goes, we're prepared, and that's the whole point. Open and agnostic is how we're looking at building products. Talk a little bit about the fact that if you're a retailer and you've got to make all these adaptations, you've got to change, you've got to participate in these new ways of finding, retaining new repeat clients, what tools are you to use to change? Well, one of the trends that's happening that's real is new sources and better sources of data. The answering the unanswered questions for retailers. It's sort of bimodal. There are people who have participated in the retail ecosystem who are now seeing value not in what their core business was, but in the data that passes through their business. Now, all of this new data that's going to be available to retailers is going to be somewhat sanitized, but it's going to be both granular and global at the same time. You're going to be able as a retailer to get data that says, on a granular level, somebody that comes in and buys this product from me will, to a 75% likelihood, buy product Y within 48 hours of buying product X from me, from somewhere else. So why am I not stocking product Y and just capturing that? That level of granularity. You're not going to get that person's name, but you're going to get that kind of data. And on a more regional level, you're going to be able to get data that says what products in what colors and what sizes in a 30-mile radius are selling, and does that mate up to what I have on my shelves? There are new sources of data that are coming down the pike that are going to help these retailers find the underserved groups, develop their niche, find the customers with the propensity to spend the most dollars. And you should know that right now, Retail Pro is forming partnerships with these companies. We want to be in that value-added chain of providing these data services. And it's not all acquisition, it's retention also. They can show you through data who the next 100 likely repeat customers from your store that will never set foot in your store again So this kind of data is very valuable. It's one of the few tools on the other side that are helping retailers to exploit that niche that they need to exploit to compete and survive in this kind of a market. It's not finding new ways to compete and survive is a necessity. The sort of old three levers that retailers had, promotions, price, and inventory, it's just not going to cut it in this world. Inventory is becoming ubiquitous. Price is being driven down by online retailers, and service and the one-to-one aspect of retail is emerging as the only way you can differentiate yourself. It's an adapt mentality. It's not, and these things are never absolute. The same study that I'm quoting right now actually pointed out how there are always outliers who execute well, who will go against the trend. And if you do it well enough, you can swim upstream. They use as an example Kohl's. Kohl's is a U.S. sort of mid-market retailer. Kohl's still philosophically does only three things: promotion, price, and inventory. It's just, so they're going upstream against, they're not using social media to any active amount. They're still using the U.S. mail as the number one tool that they use to communicate. Their loyalty program is extremely specific and extremely one-to-one. So it's a strange truth that they're swimming upstream, but they're using technology to do it. That's the differentiation. They have big data in the back of the house. They're not using it in the front of the house. They're not using it at point of purchase. They're not using technology in the customer experience. They're using it to figure out exactly at what point they can draw you into the store and keep you in the store. So Kohl's is well known for sending you something on Monday in your mailbox and sending your neighbor something, and if you went and had lunch and compared what you got, they would not be the same things. That's how targeted they're able to pull the three levers of price, promotion, and inventory. And that's how they're winning. They're using technology as the driver for traditional retailing. Swimming upstream, but doing it effectively. So it's not all about acquiring and retaining. It's also about minimizing risk. And, once again, in comparison to the past, minimizing risk in retail was mostly inventory and cash focused, right? You wanted to keep your shrinkage low. You wanted to have good policy and procedure so employees couldn't run away with the proceeds. You wanted to have good receiving policy and procedure so what you were ordering, your suppliers were actually sending to you. But all of that's kind of changed because $100 worth of product a week walking out the back door is bad. But it's not the equivalent of the cascading liability of credit card fraud. This cascading liability from the banks and the card issuers down to past the processor, down to the retailer and its system suppliers is really a high-risk thing for retail right now. And I know if you're international, you say, well, we don't yet have PCI. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming to the world on a bunch of different levels. And if you're in North America, you're saying, oh, Carrie, why are you talking about this? We just got over the PADSS 1.4 hump. I'm sorry. This thing is a sleeping dragon. We cannot put our heads in the sand on this and just think we made it past that one big scare and it's going to go away. I think that you have to understand we see this so seriously that we are investing in the next coming months on building end-to-end encrypted solutions for version 8, version 9, Prism, and the mobile device, so we can put a push on in our ecosystem to get all of our retailers out of scope of PCI for the point of sale piece and get that monkey off of my back, off of your backs, and off of the retailers' backs. This is something we are going to spend time and effort on. We're going to make it as cost effective as possible. But it is something that, look, this is a one breach. I mean, it's either a one breach and you're out of business, or almost worse, it's one breach and now your trusted customers don't trust you anymore. Either one of those, it's either a fast death or a slow death. And it's not like the traditional risks in retail where, it's death by 1,000 cuts over 5 years. This is finite. And I guess I'm trying to implore you as business partners to understand how seriously I take it. I think it's serious for you, and I want to believe that all of our customers are taking it as seriously, but I don't see it. I don't see the adoption as aggressive as it should be, and this is something we will spend resources and time on and ask for your help. These solutions that we're building are not just, the scope is not simply get you out of PCI scope for your point of sale. It also puts you into a world where some of these big data sources are able to include you in programs where you can participate and you can get some of this data organically through that relationship. So it's a manifold initiative for us. It helps us now, it helps you now, and it helps us tomorrow. And I think it's important. I think it's important to get out of scope once and for all, and to not have this sort of Damocles over every retailer's head in North America about when is the council going to announce a standard for mobile? When is 1.5 going to come out, and how much money am I going to have to spend to be PADSS 1.5 compliant? So this is all part of a philosophy that we're trying to act upon of, Retail Pro cares now, we care in the future. We want to be the place that retailers come to for an effective, modern, safe solution. It's important. We still have the most valuable piece of our elevator pitch, second to our worldwide network of partners, is sort of our presence and our clients around the world. We continue to invest time and money in expanding the footprint, in adding more languages, adding more fiscalizations, being where our international customers want to be. I think every partner in this room has probably had some benefit of the sort of cross-border trend that's going on in retail right now. It's not just Paris and Rome or Milan, going out to the rest of the world. You've got a sort of confluence of everybody crossing borders now, and it's benefiting us because when you cross borders, Retail Pro wins a lot. So take a look at what's going on from our perspective around the world. Very briefly, I'm not going to bore you with slides of statistics, but China. Start with China. China's been for us. It's been good. We're there. We're supporting our multinational clients. We're trying to help more retailers get into China. China's sort of a bimodal, semi-success story from an analyst point of view, right? China is doing very well in overall success in luxury goods and the adoption of technology in those high-end stores. The sort of propensity to use mobile and electronic coupons and really basing their loyalty programs not on paper and pushing promotions to the smartphone. It's happening real time in the high-end markets, retail markets in China. And then organic Chinese, retailing, Chinese chains is doing very well at the other end of the market. And then in the middle, it's kind of a burgeoning middle class that's not easily understood by Western retailers, and it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm not here to analyze what it takes to succeed in China, just to say that we continue to invest, we continue to support our clients there. It's continuing to be a high-growth, important market for us. Shift, if we will, to Europe. Europe is like the U.S. We have a really strong population of really well-educated partners there, and hundreds of years of retail knowledge and retail pro knowledge, and it's a huge asset. We all know what's going on economically in Western Europe, and what we see from our standpoint is sort of a hold and survive mentality in retailers. They're not as much spending on their own brick and mortar expansions, more sort of secondary strategies, brand licensing, franchising, which is actually good for Retail Pro because we do very well in those sort of, the power of the Oracle database in version 9 and the ability to sort of hash data however you need to and look at discrete results. It's been good for us. The franchising thing has actually won us accounts in Europe. We see, some stores, not just in Europe, but in the US. I read this article in the Wall Street Journal about Giggle Baby, which is like a layette and baby store, East Coast based, and Sephora, both doing store-in-store in JCPenney's in the US. So, and the answer was, why would you do that? You both are retailers that classically put up your own brick and mortar. And the answer was, look, this is a way to capture more market more quickly with lower risk, and it works for both of us. And JCPenney is one of those influx chains which is trying to really adopt technology and trying to push forward a new JCPenney. But we see this sort of adapt and overcome mentality being put forth from the European retailers, waiting for the economy to come back. Move to Latin America now, where, in the last 2 years, we've sold thousands and thousands of stores outside the U.S., and the growth in Latin America has been very, very dominant and aggressive. And I have to say that, they have strong economic growth. You have Brazil leading the way with, double-digit growth. But what you're also seeing is the thing, once again, that benefits Retail Pro the most, and that is what you would say is national retailers becoming multinational retailers. When you cross borders, we win. I'm sure in each of your locales, there's 5 or 6 domestic companies you compete against. But when you start crossing borders, there are really only 2 or 3 worldwide companies that have anywhere near the capability that we have for adapting to their needs. And we have just capitalized on that in Latin America, and we continue to. And part of it is not just our product. It is the willingness of the partner ecosystem in Latin America to bind together and work seamlessly. An important factor. Their willingness to sort of create a seamless cross-border experience for these retailers is making a huge difference in winning scale deals. Well, lastly, I talk a little bit about North America, the U.S. in particular. I think we know what's going on here. Very variable growth in retail, never greater than 1.5%, sometimes down 0.5%, a quarter. It's become a fight for the customer in the U.S. This whole the online versus brick and mortar is more a predominant war in the U.S. Than perhaps outside. But the good news, if you're in North America, and if you didn't take it away from like 5 slides ago, I'll just repeat it. The good news is that retailers realize they have to modernize. And spending on technology will be, for the next 5 years, disproportionate to growth. That's good for us. They realize they're behind the curve, and they're going to spend money to get where they need to get. We continue to sort of stick to our core principles. 1, build open agnostic products, build products with good feature sets, make them so that you, the partner, you, the development partner, can adapt them to the needs of our clients. Continue to focus on purpose-built products for crossing borders and continue to expand the footprint. This is not, it's not a new era at Retail Pro in terms of our direction. It's a new era product-wise. It's a new era philosophically. But we are sticking to our core competencies. We are sticking to crisp execution. And to focusing on, these core principles that we made the theme of this conference: drive, build, create. That's how we're moving forward. Thank you for your attention.